Namaste and welcome to Middle Class University. I am your host Abhijit. In this video, let us learn about the fundamentals of infrastructure. So in this video, I am going to explain you about what is infrastructure, significance of infrastructure, types of infrastructure, and various contextual variations with respect to the types of infrastructure. Moving on to the next slide, what is infrastructure? There are a lot of definitions given to the infrastructure, but the main one is from the World Bank. So let us know what is the definition given by the World Bank. Infrastructure is often termed as social overhead capital by the World Bank. So let us decode what does this social overhead and capital represent. First things first, social means the infrastructure benefits the entire society or the entire nation. The next word is overhead. Overhead actually refers to the expenditure which is very important but which cannot be attributable to a specific revenue stream. For example, in this slide I have mentioned highways. You know that highways actually benefit multiple industries. It boosts manufacturing sector, service sector, transportation sector, etc. But we cannot directly link the profit of one particular industry to the roadways or the highways. Similar example is the salary given to the security personnel of an institution. Although they do not contribute directly to the profits of the company, but having a security personnel is very much important for an organization. These examples come under the category what we called as overhead. So now let us learn about the word capital. Capital in the infrastructure means that the infrastructure requires significant upfront investment before it actually adds value. That means you can consider the example of metro, or also you can also consider the example of highways and many other infrastructure. We need huge investment upfront, but later on it adds value, it gives profit to whom uh, it was built by. So let us move on to the next slide, that is the significance of infrastructure. So the first significance of infrastructure is that it boosts the economic growth. Infrastructure is vital for removing the bottlenecks that restricts the economic growth. Now we can consider an example here, that is the roadways, which is a common example. So without roadways, there might be many manufacturing sectors which cannot transport its finished product from one place to another. So because of the absence of the road, we can see that bottleneck that restricts the economic growth of a nation. So if infrastructure is there, then they can easily transport whatever finished goods they have manufactured into the consumer base, which is far away from the manufacturing base. So this was all about the significance, that is the economic growth. So the next significance of infrastructure is the inclusivity. We know that the infrastructure must serve the entire society. It should also include the poorer segments, which actually helps in the poverty alleviation. We know that because of that infrastructure, the poorer segments can actually make use of that infrastructure and eventually raise their income. In that way, infrastructure helps in the poverty alleviation. In that sense, infrastructure must serve the entire society. There shouldn't be any discrimination for the usage of the infrastructure. So the next significance of infrastructure is sustainability. We know that the construction of any infrastructure often relies on natural resources. So what should be our motto here? If we are using natural resources, we should actually maintain sustainable practices. That we have to optimize the resources. We should use all the resources like water in the limited quantity. We have to make sure that nothing is wasted during the process of construction of any infrastructure or during the infrastructure project. So these three are the significance of infrastructure. Now let us learn about the types of infrastructure. There is actually a debate of economic infrastructure versus social infrastructure, and also with respect to the different perspectives in which these two can be seen. So, but basically there are two types of infrastructure, which is economic infrastructure and social infrastructure. In economic infrastructure, we can observe the high upfront capital investment. Here I have mentioned the examples of energy, transportation and telecom. In these cases, we actually need a lot of investments from various stakeholders in order to establish it. Later on, after a period of certain amount of years, it can be recovered. So this is the example of economic infrastructure. Now let us come to social infrastructure. In the case of social infrastructure, the capital requirements compared to the economic infrastructure is low. In this, I have mentioned the examples of health, education, police and judiciary. So for all these cases, even though the capital requirements are high, but they are not as high as economic infrastructure. So these two were the major categories of infrastructure. Now let us move on to the next slide, that is the context with respect to the types of infrastructure. That is the contextual variations. If we consider water supply and sanitation as an example and see three areas where water supply and sanitation actually are observed, in the rural infrastructure, water supply is often focused on basic needs like agriculture, that is in the irrigation. Whereas when we observe in the urban infrastructure, we need sanitation systems and drinking water facilities, which are quite more advanced when we compare it to the rural infrastructure. But when we see in the industrial clusters or the industrial infrastructures, there we require specialized infrastructures like effluent treatment plants for focused economic activities. So in these cases, the type of infrastructure, that is the social and economic infrastructure, varies. In rural infrastructure, let us say the water supply and sanitation may be considered as the social infrastructure, but in urban infrastructure and industrial clusters, water supply and sanitation should have been considered as the economic infrastructure. So this was all about the today's video. Thank you for watching the video. Like this video and subscribe to my channel and share this with your friends. Thank you.